Speaking of taking so long, I've teased the audience enough. I've made them wait almost 15 full minutes now. So can go ahead and give us the titillating details of some of the hijinks that people played, given that they have this thing now on a public blockchain.
Yeah, when this was announced, I was quite interested to see how long it would take. I actually had a bet. I called my brother and I was talking about this, and I said, hey, let's take bets as to how many days it'll take before this finally happens. And it was like, I think probably the day after they launched the fund, all this stuff came to fruition, because it's like, you can't stop it from happening on a public chain. And what I'm talking about is that people sent, well, there's multiple things. So one is that people sent sanctioned money into the Blackrock wallet address. And so what they did was there was a Tornado Cash mixer, which the OFAC had sanctioned. And so what happened was
what does that mean? Just for people who don't know what the heck you're talking about. Can you unpack those terms?
Right, yes. So Tornado Cash was another sort of big event in the last couple of years in the blockchain space. So the US government basically put on the sanctioned list, on the OFAC sanctioned list, this smart contract called Tornado Cash. And Tornado Cash is what you call a mixer. It's what you use to wash funds on the blockchain. And so privacy advocates will dispute that, and they will say that, well, it's something that you use to keep your balances private. Because remember, public blockchains, every transaction is fully public. And so whenever I transfer money to Bob, everyone can see what I'm doing. It's completely transparent, at least pseudonymous, because they can see my address, right? And if I have any linkage, any metadata associated with my address on any exchanges, then people can identify exactly who's sending money to who. And that's a privacy leak, right? And so privacy advocates will say
let me stop you there. So what the public blockchains show is it's a public ledger. That's the whole point, or that's one of the points. And so It's crystal clear for the rest of time, going back, backwards in time to the very first blocks being added to the chain, as to, tokens were moved from this address to that address. And then that got added. And so that's all sitting there. So it doesn't say Zuhar Rashid sent 3 ETH to Robert Murphy. It says, this address sent 3 ETH to that address. Right. But your point is, over time, if so it's the feds or whoever is investigating somebody, and they can just figure out, that address is tied to, from some other transaction, we realize that Robert Murphy is the guy controlling that one address, then that means going back to the whole ledger, that address is probably him doing all those things. And so then they can start doing, so that's what people do by saying it's not anonymous, but it's also not fully us. And so it's pseudonymous that I don't know what you got to say. I don't know what the opposite of anonymous is, but pseudonymous means it's like partial, where it doesn't have your literal name, but it does have a unique signature tied to you. And so if they could somehow figure out just one of them who that guy is, then that they know all your dealings for that address. You could have multiple addresses you control.
Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of it is depends on heuristic analysis and things like that. But ultimately, the crux of it is that there is less privacy on a public blockchain than you may initially think if you're not familiar with the workings of a public blockchain. And so what people have created are things like mixers, like Tornado Cash, which allow people to intermingle all their funds, or whatever funds they deposit into this contract. And then the contract will disperse the funds in such a way that, using cryptography, modern cryptography, and what happens is, just to spare you the gory details, what happens is you can get your funds out on the other side, and the origination of those funds has been obfuscated. And so the individuals who receive the funds on the other side, you receive them on a fresh address, and then now the origin of the funds has been obfuscated, right? So privacy advocates love this. It's a great thing for them. From the perspective of regulators and anti-AML, KYC, and governmental actors, they see it as, okay, well, you're washing money and you're performing criminal activity. And so,
can I stop you again? So for the listener, so the idea is, and tell me if this is wrong, at a 30,000 foot level. So what the authority, the authorities are watching some guy, and they figure out through forensic analysis and blah, 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 that, he's controlling, these 17 addresses are his. We know that. He probably has more, but we've pinned down to these 17. And so now if that guy wants to send money to some other nefarious character, if he's clever, he's going to know, I might be monitored. And so I won't just directly send it, because then if they know my address, then they know that guy's address. So instead, what they can do is, what it looks like to the people looking at it is, he sent his funds into the Tornado Cash, into the addresses that they can control on the receiving end, and then they mix it all up, and then maybe they break, his influx gets broken up into 1,000 different outputs going to other addresses, and since there's lots of people sending their money into Tornado Cash, and on the other end, lots of not money, but tokens are coming out the other end, getting blasted to all these other things, and from the outsider's point of view, they can't tie an input to an output, and so now, yes, there still are funds going to that other character that they think is dubious, but they can't really prove who sent it to them. And so that link gets broken by going through this mixer.
Right. No, exactly. And that's why it's called Tornado Cash, right? It's sort of aptly named for the function it performs. But obviously, it's a double-edged sword when it comes to, I guess, when it comes to the regulator's perspective, right? And so what happens with it is, actually, just that tiny extra bit of history. I think it was the first time in history, as far as I understand, that a developer was arrested for writing code that was basically not explicitly malicious. So it was seen as a very egregious free speech violation when he was arrested, and it was because he basically authored this protocol that was then seen to be used by criminals and people who wanted to obfuscate the source of their funds. And so there's a whole sort of rabbit hole we could go down there, but your viewers can look that up. It's quite interesting, the story around Tornado Cash. But the way it relates to the Blackrock fund is the so there were a couple of people, and so so Tornado Cash is sanctioned, that the wallet address is sanctioned. Sorry, the contract address is sanctioned by the U.S. government. And so what happened is, people sent funds from the mixer, from the Tornado Cash mixer, into the Blackrock public fund wallet address. And if you understand Ethereum, if you know anything about Ethereum, or any sort of public blockchain, you cannot block transfers or incoming transfers into any address. It just doesn't exist in the protocol at the protocol level. So it would be as if somebody knows your home address and somebody mails you dirty cash. You can't stop them from mailing you dirty cash, right? Or you take some rudimentary measures, but on chain, it's like, if somebody knows your blockchain address, you can't stop them from sending you things. And so people sent BlackRock 1 ETH worth of, so that was like $3,000 worth of tainted money, so tainted ETH, from a Tornado Cash origination address. And
so again, just for an analogy, somebody robs a bank, and the authorities know the serial numbers of all the cash that was stolen.
Right.
And so those criminals are sitting on it, and they know not to just go to a car dealership and try to give $3,000 or whatever, $10,000 in cash, because they know they're going to get caught. So they're being real surreptitious about, in small, or finding people that can, quote, launder the money and whatever. But then if there's some guy they don't like, they could mail him, an envelope full of, a few $100 bills of the stuff that the authorities know was from the stolen bank, and then maybe tip off the feds or something. And then they're going to say, hey, how come you're getting all this money? And like you're saying, you can't. He's like, what are you talking about? I have nothing to do with that. I can't stop someone from mailing me something. What do you mean? So, but it would look awkward for that guy to be getting mailed cash that the authorities know was from a bank robbery.
Well, not only awkward in this case, it's actually incriminating, because you actually, as a I believe U.S. or non-U.S. person, you're not allowed to own. It's not a question of whether you asked for it or you accepted it. You're not allowed to own tainted money. And actually, there was a whole celebrity dusting incident. Dusting means you're sending a bunch of small dollar denominated, or not dollar denominated, but small dollar transactions into different wallets. And so a lot of celebrity wallets that were publicly known got dusted using Tornado Cash tainted money after the event, and the original event. And so all of them were technically criminals. Right. And it was quite funny, because it's completely unenforceable to some degree, but also it's ridiculous that there's such a disconnect between the regulatory authorities and the way that the public blockchain technology is progressing and is built. And so it's like, there's a big disconnect there. It's become more apparent. I think people who are doing this kind of, it's sort of a satirical play, it is to highlight these issues And so that Tornado Cash transaction into BlackRock's fund was one example of that. Additionally, so there's also not only from a incrimination perspective, but also from a vulgarity perspective, because again, institutions are very corporate, they're very polished, etc. And so
the
blockchain space likes to really, really break that mold and try to troll people. And so what people did was, I'll let your viewers Google it, but there's an address with initial BDF.eth. I won't say the full thing, but BDF.eth sent a bunch of ETH into the BlackRock wallet, or I believe it was either ETH or NFTs with vulgar depictions of things. And so it's like all this stuff is going, and this actually happened with one of the card providers. I believe it was Visa or MasterCard when they came on chain initially as well, where people were sending pornographic NFTs into their wallet address. So whenever you open their wallet on OpenSea or NFT browser, you see all this stuff, and it's like this is like a PR nightmare for the institutions, and people relish in trolling the institutions that are doing this. And then can
you just unpack the actual mechanism? So is it because an NFT is a non-fungible token,
right?
And then just for people who who aren't in the trenches with this, what does that mean? That if I went and I wanted to look and see what the BlackRock fund held in terms of assets, all of a sudden I would see a pornographic image? Or is that not quite it?
Yeah, and Bob, thanks for clarifying when I use acronyms. I've been in this for so long, I don't realize when I'm using jargon. So really, what happens with an NFT transaction is you have like a fund wallet address. Think about it as an account, right? An account that stores assets in it. Mm-hmm. So one of the assets is $100 million of USDC. Well, now anyone can deposit assets to this address, right? Not anyone can send it. Only BlackRock can send things out of the address. But to receive items in the address, anyone on the entire Ethereum blockchain can send assets into this address if they know the address. Mm-hmm. It's a public address. And so people will send assets like NFTs, like tainted Ethereum, and other types of assets into this address. And then the way that you view the assets of a wallet address on chain is through these front-end explorers. So you can go to a block explorer, type in an address, and then you'll be able to see what that address holds. So you'll be able to see the NFTs it holds, you'll be able to see the coins it holds and tokens and things like that. And so that's really what people want to shock people that are going to the fund address and looking up their assets, really.
Okay, and so again, this is real elementary, but I just want to make sure it's clicking. So you might, like in the regular corporate world with conventional assets, like somebody, sits on a copier and photocopies his rear end and then mails that photo to Chase Manhattan or something. And the people there get it in the mail room and they're like, and the public's not going to know about that, right? Because they're not going to broadcast, hey, someone mailed us a pornographic image, because their assets, like back in the, 30 years ago, were not publicly available, right? And so the public couldn't just see. Whereas the whole point of putting stuff on a blockchain, especially a public blockchain, is this is a public record. This is a ledger. Everyone can see it. Look at the transparency. And, there's lots of advantages for doing that. Yep. But then the downside is, okay, so if some joker wants to send a quote asset to that address, the protocol doesn't immediately reject it. Like anybody can send something in there. And then while it's sitting there, the public who wants to look at the contents of this public, on this public ledger, that's why it's transparency. Well, then if somebody sends a thing in a non-fungible token, artists create images and sell it that way, and they do art. And so therefore, this has the capacity to show you an image if you have the right software to be able to view it. And there you go. So someone can exploit those capacities or those capabilities to do the kind of, prank that you're just talking about.
Exactly. Right. And so that's the downside for institutions and very, I guess, traditional entities to operating on a completely public and permissionless or very censorship resistant, I would be more accurate to say, blockchain, right? Because it's very difficult to then, or impossible in a lot of cases, functionally impossible to roll back the chain or to do anything to mitigate these issues. And so because of that, the institutions will either have to sort of eat the fact that they're going to be trolled all the time on public chains, or they will have to understand that perhaps a different organization or a different sort of mechanism it is the right way to go when they're implementing blockchain technology, as our blockchain provider Provenance at Infineo has done, which is really.
Let me pump the brakes here again, and I hope this isn't too annoying to you. Probably the listeners like it.
This is great, Bob.
Yeah.